They said it the first time at a charity dinner, not to my face, never to my face. The people who move in the circles I move in have learned, over decades of expensive education and careful social conditioning, that the things they truly mean are best delivered sideways. In the comment made to the person standing next to you while you both look at the subject. In the smile that is warm on the surface and cold underneath. In the specific, elegant way that powerful people communicate contempt without ever having to claim it. I heard it from across the room. 3 words. Gold digger. Obviously. The voice belonged to a man named Chibuike Emenike Okafor. 58 years old, managing director of a real estate firm, the kind of man who had built his entire professional identity around the performance of significance, and who understood, at some level he would never consciously acknowledge, that the significance of other people was a threat to his own. The subject of the comment was standing beside me. His name was Tobechukwu Duru. He was 36 years old. He ran a small electrical contracting business in the Wuz district of Abuja, in a workshop that smelled of copper wire and the specific warm metal air of a space where current moved through things and made them work. He was wearing a suit that was clean and well fitted and that had cost him something. Not what the suits in this room had cost, but something. He was holding a glass of water because he did not drink alcohol and had not apologized for not drinking alcohol, which was, I would come to understand, consistent with everything else about him. He had not heard the comment. Or he had heard it and had decided, with the specific discipline of someone who has made peace with being underestimated, to receive it in silence. I was 51 years old. I was the founder and CEO of Easy Capital Partners, one of the most significant infrastructure investment firms in northern Nigeria. I had been on the covers of 3 business publications. I had testified before the National Assembly. I had built something from an idea and a small inheritance, and 15 years of decisions that were correct more often than they were wrong, and that were always made with full information and complete conviction. I was also a widow of 4 years. And I was apparently incapable of making a decision about a man without the decision being explained by the man's interest in my money rather than by my own interest in who he was. That assumption, that specific, expensive, elegant assumption, was going to cost the people who held it something they were not prepared to pay. But they didn't know that yet. And I was not going to tell them. Not tonight. If you have ever been in a room where someone reduced you to a transaction, stay with me. Because this story is about what happens when the transaction turns out to be something else entirely. And the people who made the reduction have to live with what they missed. Subscribe, because the ending will not be what you expect. I had met Tobechukwu Duru 7 months before the charity dinner, on a morning when the Abuja Harmattan was doing its particular work on the city. The air thin and pale, the sky a washed copper, the dust that settled on everything, and that was, in the specific way of things you cannot control, simply the condition of the season, and not a problem to be solved. My office building's backup generator had failed. This was not a catastrophic failure. The main power supply was functioning, and the building had redundant systems. But the backup generator was a critical component of the infrastructure that kept the server room at its required temperature, and a critical component that was not functioning was, in my professional assessment, a problem that required immediate attention, regardless of whether the immediate consequences were visible. My facilities manager had called 3 electrical contractors before finding one available on short notice. The one available was Duru Electrical Services. The man who arrived was Tobechukwu himself, not a technician, which told me something immediately, because business owners who show up personally to jobs that could be delegated are a specific kind of person. And the specificity is usually worth noting. He was a compact man, with the particular physical quality of someone who works with their hands and whose body has organized itself around the work, not large, but present, with the economy of movement of someone who has learned that efficient motion and accurate motion are usually the same motion. He assessed the generator in 40 minutes. He presented his findings in person, to me, because my facilities manager had told him the building owner wanted to be briefed directly, which was accurate, and which most contractors found inconvenient, and which he did not find inconvenient at all. He stood in my office with his assessment written on a single page, handwritten, clear, organized in the specific way of someone who had thought through what needed to be communicated before writing it. And he walked me through it with the directness of someone who has decided that the person across from him is capable of receiving accurate information. I asked 7 questions. He answered all 7 completely, without simplifying, without padding, without the specific performance of competence that insecure people use to cover the gaps in their actual competence. When he finished, I said, "How long to fix it properly?" 2 days for the parts, he said. 1 day for the installation. 3 days total. And the temporary solution while we wait for parts? I can stabilize the server room temperature with a supplemental cooling unit I have in the truck, he said. It will hold for 3 days, without risk. Do it, I said. He left to get the cooling unit. I sat at my desk and looked at the single handwritten page. I could not have told you at that moment what I was looking at specifically. It was a technical document. What I was responding to was not the content, but the quality of it. The quality of something done by someone who had decided that the work deserved to be done at the level it deserved, regardless of whether anyone was measuring. He came back the following day with the parts, and the day after, and on the 3rd day, when the generator was fully restored, and the server room temperature was stable, and the job was complete, he came to my office to close out the work order, and I asked him, with the specific directness that I brought to most things, "How long have you been running the business?" 8 years, he said. Started with 1 van and 2 employees. Now we have 7 vans and 14 employees. Profitable? I said. Consistently, he said. We don't grow faster than the work can sustain. I looked at him. That's either wisdom or limitation, I said. He looked at me with the expression of someone who has heard something before. Both, he said, depending on the day. I almost smiled. Someone said that to me recently, I said. It's probably true for most things, he said. He gave me his card. I gave him mine. He looked at it the way people look at cards when the name on the card is significant, and they have decided not to perform their recognition of the significance. Thank you for the work, I said. Thank you for the job, he said. The generator work is interesting. Most contractors don't want the diagnostic complexity. You do? I said. Complexity is just information that hasn't been organized yet, he said. Once it's organized, it's not complex. It's just accurate. He left. I sat at my desk with his card. I thought about that sentence for 3 days. Then I called him. Not for another job, for the conversation. What I came to understand about Tobachukwu Duru, over the months that followed the generator repair, was that he was a man who had built his life around a set of principles that were simple and absolute, and that he applied with the consistency of someone who had decided, at some point early enough, that it had become simply how he was, that the principles were worth more than the exceptions. He was honest, not performatively, not the kind of honesty that announces itself and expects credit, the functional kind. The kind where the truth is simply the most efficient tool available, and therefore the one he always reached for. He was patient, not passively, not the patience of someone who accepts what they receive without expectation, the active kind. The patience of someone who understands that the right moment for a thing is the right moment, and that forcing the wrong moment produces inferior results, regardless of the effort invested. He had grown up in Enugu, the second of 4 children of a man who had been an electrician his entire working life, and who had raised his children with the specific understanding that a trade done excellently was not a lesser thing than a profession done adequately. This understanding had shaped Tobechukwu in ways that were visible in everything he did. The way he worked, the way he spoke, the way he moved through rooms that were not designed with him in mind. He had studied electrical engineering in Enugu for 3 years before leaving to help his father when his father's health declined. He had not finished the degree. He had not pretended this was irrelevant. He had also not pretended it was more significant than it was. He had a son, 11 years old. His name was Ekene. His mother, Tobechukwu's wife for 3 years, had died when Ekene was 4, in a road accident on the Enugu-Onitsha expressway on a morning that had been ordinary until it was not. Tobechukwu spoke about this with the specific quality of someone who has processed grief to its honest conclusion, not past it, because grief does not have a past, but through it, into the place where it is simply a fact about your life that you carry accurately rather than a wound that defines everything else. Ekene came to the workshop on weekends. He was a quiet child, with his father's eyes and his own internal world that was clearly rich and completely private. And he sat in the workshop office and read while his father worked, and occasionally asked questions that were significantly more precise than an 11-year-old's questions were expected to be. I met Ekene on the 4th visit to the workshop. He looked at me with the assessment that children who spend a lot of time around working adults develop, the specific, calibrated look of someone who has learned to distinguish between people who are present in a space and people who are merely occupying it. He said, "Are you the one from the big building on Aguiyi Ironsi?" "Yes," I said. "Daddy fixed your generator," he said. "He did," I said. "Properly." Ekene looked at his father, then at me. "He fixes everything properly," he said, the tone of someone stating a fact they consider beyond discussion. "I know," I said. "That's why I keep coming back." Ekene considered this. Then he went back to his book. I looked at Tobechukwu. He was looking at his son with the expression that parents have when their child has done something they are privately proud of, but will not say so directly. I understood that expression. I had worn it myself, for my own children, in different rooms. I thought, this man is a good father. And the thought settled in me the way the true things settle, quietly, without announcement, in the specific way of something that has found the place it was looking for. The Abuja social world is a particular thing. It is smaller than it appears, and more connected than it acknowledges, and information moves through it with the speed and specificity of a current through a well-maintained circuit, directly, without resistance, to wherever the current is going, which meant that when Tobechukwu began appearing at events I attended, not the formal business events, the more relaxed ones, the cultural evenings and the industry dinners and the foundation fundraisers that occupied the social calendar of people at a certain level of professional and civic life, it was noticed, not immediately, not comprehensively, but progressively, in the way that things are noticed in social worlds that are small enough to notice everything eventually. The first person to say something to me directly was my colleague, Amara Nwachukwu, 49 years old, co-founder of a consulting firm, a woman I had known for 15 years and whose opinions I valued precisely because they were always specific rather than general. She found me at the edge of a rooftop reception in Maitama, where the Abuja evening was doing its warm and enormous thing, and the city lights were beginning to appear in the distance below us. "The electrician," she said, without preamble, because Amara had long since decided that preamble was inefficient. "His name is Tobechukwu Duru," I said. "I know his name," she said. "I looked him up after the Transcorp event." She paused. "He's 36. "I know," I said. "You're 51. "I know that too," I said. She looked at me with the expression she used when she was assessing something she hadn't yet reached a conclusion about. "Is it serious?" she said. It's real, I said. Which is more important? She was quiet for a moment. People are talking, she said. Not as a warning, as information. What are they saying? I said. She looked at the city lights. The usual things, she said. That it's a phase. That he's after what you've built. That a woman in your position should know better. She paused. Chibuike Emenike Okafor has been particularly vocal. Chibuike has been particularly vocal about my decisions for 20 years, I said. His consistency is his only reliable quality. She almost smiled. What does your daughter think? She said. I thought about Adaeze. 27 years old. Brilliant. Difficult in the specific way of people who are brilliant and know it and are still working out what to do with the knowledge. She had been living in London for 2 years, working for a financial firm, and she called me every Sunday with the specific mix of genuine connection and careful distance that adult children maintain with parents they love and do not entirely understand. She doesn't know yet, I said. Amara looked at me. You haven't told her, she said. I'm waiting for the right moment, I said. There is no right moment for that conversation, she said. I know, I said, but there are wrong ones. She was quiet. Be careful, she said, finally, not as a judgment, as the honest concern of someone who had been my colleague for 15 years and meant it without the social packaging. I'm always careful, I said. No, she said. You're always strategic. Those are different things. I held her gaze. She was right. I did not say so. But I thought about it for a long time after she walked away. The charity dinner was the first public event where Tobechukwu and I appeared together in a context that was unambiguously social rather than professional. I had chosen it deliberately. Not as a declaration. I was not a person who made declarations. As an introduction. The specific, controlled introduction of something real into the social context that would eventually encounter it regardless, with the timing and the framing chosen by me rather than by the social world's own momentum. Tobechukwu had asked, when I invited him, whether he was comfortable attending an event of that kind. He had said, define comfortable. I had said, there will be people who make judgments about you before you open your mouth. He had said, that describes most rooms I've been in. These rooms have more resources to act on the judgments, I said. He had looked at me with the expression he used when he was considering something completely. I'll go, he said. Because you're asking and because it matters to you that I'm there. Not because I'm comfortable. He paused. Comfortable is not the same as willing. That answer was the reason I had been coming to his workshop for 7 months. The dinner was held at a hotel in the Wooster 2 district, a space that understood its own significance and had arranged itself accordingly, with the chandeliers and the marble floors and the specific smell of imported flowers and expensive perfume and the particular social hum of a room full of people who were there to be seen performing their generosity. We arrived together, not with a statement, not with the performance of arrival. We walked in as two people who had come to the same place from the same direction, which was simply true and did not require framing beyond the truth. The room registered us immediately. I had expected this. Abuja's social world registers everything. What I noted, carefully and completely, was how it registered us. The looks. The specific geometry of who looked at whom and in what sequence. Who moved to greet us with warmth. Who was warm to me and managed Tobechukwu with the particular polished neutrality of someone who has decided not to engage a subject they don't know how to categorize. Who avoided the greeting entirely. I noted Chibuike Emenike Okafor across the room, speaking to 2 other men, with the expression of someone who had seen something he was going to discuss. I noted the comment that arrived at me 3 minutes later, carried by the specific acoustics of a room that was not designed for private speech. 3 words. Gold digger. Obviously. I looked at Tobechukwu beside me. He was looking at the room with the expression I had come to know. Present, unhurried, not managing his response to what the room was producing. I said quietly, "You heard that?" "Yes," he said. "Are you all right?" He looked at me. "I've been called worse," he said, "by people with less to lose by being wrong." I held his gaze. "What do you mean?" I said. "People who call someone a gold digger without evidence," he said, "are making an investment in a belief. If the belief is wrong, they lose something. Their judgment, their certainty, their position on the matter." He paused. "The more they've said it publicly, the more they lose when the truth arrives." He looked at the room. "I'm patient. The truth arrives eventually." I looked at him. I thought about Amara saying, "You're always strategic." That's different from careful. I thought about the distance between strategic and patient. I thought about what it meant to be in a room with someone who was genuinely patient, not as a tactic, not as a performance, but as the actual operating principle of how they moved through a world that had not always been fair to them. "Come," I said. "There are people here I want you to meet." And I brought him into the room. Not because the room deserved him, because I had decided, and because my decisions were mine. That was the whole reason. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 2 weeks later, when my daughter arrived from London. Adaeze Ezinwosu landed at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport on a Tuesday afternoon. And I knew from the tone of her messages in the preceding week. Shorter than usual, more precise, with the specific quality of someone managing information they were working toward, rather than simply communicating, that she had heard something. She had not asked directly. She did not ask directly until we were in the car, 40 minutes into the drive back to the house, when the initial conversation about London and the firm and her workload and the small daily details of her life had been covered, and the specific silence of an omission had become too loud to maintain. "Who is he?" she said. I did not pretend I didn't know what she was asking. "His name is Tobechukwu Duru," I said. "He runs an electrical contracting business. He's 36 years old. He's been in my life for 7 months." The car was quiet. "7 months," she said. "Yes. And you didn't tell me." "I'm telling you now," I said. "Because someone else told me first," she said. I looked at her. She was 27 years old, and she had her father's face, and my discipline, and the combination of these two things had produced someone who was both genuinely perceptive and genuinely impatient with what she perceived, which was most things, very quickly. "Who told you?" I said. "Auntie Chisholm," she said. Chisholm was my late husband's younger sister, 53 years old, who had been part of the extended family architecture since before my husband and I married, and who had, in the years since his death, maintained a relationship with Adaeze and my son Chuka that was warmer than her relationship with me. "What did she say?" I said. Adaeze looked out the window. "She said you were making a mistake," she said, "that you were lonely, and that a man 15 years younger who worked with his hands had found a way to take advantage of that loneliness." She paused. She said the family needed to intervene before it went further. I sat with that. The Abuja afternoon moved through the car windows in its usual way, the road, the buildings, the specific quality of this city in the late afternoon light. "And what do you think?" I said. Adaeze was quiet for a moment. "I think I want to meet him," she said, "before I think anything." I looked at her. This was the right answer. It was also the answer I had not assumed she would give, because the right answer is frequently not the first answer, and Adaeze was a person who often gave first answers before she arrived at right ones. "That's fair," I said. "Is he?" She stopped. She was choosing her words with the care of someone who understands that how a question is asked shapes what answer arrives. Is he what they're saying he is? No, I said, simply. How do you know? Because I know what people look like when they see what I have instead of who I am, I said. I've been a public figure for 15 years. I've had that experience. I know what it feels like. I paused. This is not what that feels like. Adaizi was quiet. Then, what does it feel like? I thought about it honestly. Like being seen by someone who would look at me the same way if none of the rest of it existed, I said. A long silence. Okay, she said quietly. Not agreement. Processing. We drove the rest of the way in the silence of two people who have said what needed to be said, and are now sitting with it in the specific way that important things require sitting with before they can move. Chuka called from Port Harcourt the following morning. My son was 24 years old, and he had less of my discipline and more of my intuition, and the combination of these two things had produced someone who arrived at conclusions accurately, but not always through the logical path that accuracy usually required. He said, "Mummy, the electrician. His name is Tobachukwu," I said. "I know his name," Chuka said. "Uncle Emeka told me." Emeka was my late husband's elder brother, 60 years old, who had been the family patriarch since my husband's death, and who fulfilled that role with the genuine love of a man who cared about the family, and the genuine limitation of a man who understood the family through the lens of its traditions, rather than its present reality. "What did Emeka say?" I said. "He said there was a meeting," Chuka said. "The family. He wants to discuss—" He stopped. He said it needed to be a family conversation. I was quiet. A family meeting. I had known this was coming. Not the timing, not the specific form, but the fact of it. Because the specific social world I occupied had specific mechanisms for managing deviation from its expectations, and a family meeting was one of those mechanisms. "When?" I said. "He's thinking this weekend," Chuka said, "while Adaiz is here." "He timed it with Adaizi's visit," I said. "Yes," Chuka said. He did not pretend this was coincidental. "All right," I said. "Mummy," Chuka said, "are you—" "I'm fine," I said. "I know you're fine," he said. "That's not what I was asking." I held the phone. My son, 24 years old, asking me something more precise than what his words contained. "What were you asking?" I said. "I was asking if you're happy," he said. Simply. I thought about the question honestly. "Yes," I said. A pause. "Then that's what I needed to know," he said. He hung up. I sat at my desk. The Abuja morning was doing what it did, the harmattan retreating now toward its seasonal edge, the air beginning to recover its warmth, the city outside my window moving through its usual enormous and indifferent life. I thought about a family meeting, about the things that would be said in it, and the things that would be left unsaid, and the specific, familiar architecture of a gathering convened to manage something that the people convening it believed required management. I thought about Tobachukwu at the charity dinner saying, "I'm patient. The truth arrives eventually." I picked up my phone. I called him. "There's going to be a family meeting this weekend," I said when he answered. A brief silence. "About me," he said. "About the situation," I said. "Which is me and you, but framed as a situation because that's how family meetings work." "Are you asking me to attend?" he said. "No," I said. "Not yet. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what's happening." "All right," he said. "Tobachukwu," I said. "Yes." "Whatever happens in that meeting," I said, "I need you to know that the decision has already been made, by me, about my own life." A silence. "I know," he said. "I want to make sure you know," I said. "Kioma," he said. He had begun using my middle name, the one that preceded the professional name, in the specific moments when the professional name was the wrong name for what was being said. I know. I've known since the dinner last month. A pause. I also know that knowing doesn't make the meeting easier. For you or for them. I held the phone. No, I said. It doesn't. Do what you need to do, he said. I'll be here. He hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, and I thought about the meeting, about what I was going to say in it, and about the thing I had not yet told anyone. Not Amara, not Adaeze, not Chuka, not Tobechukwu himself. The thing that would change every calculation everyone was making about this situation. The thing that was sitting in a folder in my desk drawer, signed and dated, and waiting for the right moment. I had been waiting for the right moment for 3 weeks. The family meeting was the right moment. I opened the desk drawer. I looked at the folder. I closed the drawer. Not yet. The truth was patient. I had learned that from the man they called a gold digger. I could practice it for a few more days. The family meeting was held on Saturday afternoon at my house. Not at Emeka's, at mine. I had made this clear when the meeting was proposed, with the specific calm of someone establishing a condition rather than issuing a challenge. The meeting could happen wherever Emeka felt comfortable hosting it, or it could happen at my house. Those were the options. It happened at my house. Emeka arrived at 3 with his wife, Aunt Ngozi, who was warm in the way of women who use warmth as a navigational tool, directing it toward things they wanted to encourage and withdrawing it, without announcement, from things they did not. Chisholm arrived separately, with the expression of someone who has decided the situation requires her presence and is fulfilling that presence with purpose. Adiz was already there, having spent Friday night at the house, and she moved through the arrival of the extended family with the composed neutrality of someone who was observing rather than participating. Chuka had driven from Port Harcourt and arrived 20 minutes after Emeka, with the energy of someone who had been in a car for 4 hours and had used the 4 hours to think. We sat in the formal sitting room, the one with the high ceilings and the large windows, and the particular quality of a space that had been designed for gatherings that mattered, which meant it had been designed to communicate something about the person who owned it, without the person having to say the thing directly. I sat at one end of the main sofa. I had dressed with intention, not to impress. They had known me for 20 years. They were past the stage of being impressed. With the specific intention of someone who was sitting in a room where a decision had already been made and wanted the room to register that the decision was not available for revision. Emeka spoke first, because he always spoke first, because it was his role to speak first, and he had occupied that role for 25 years with the combination of genuine affection and genuine certainty that characterized the best and most limited versions of the patriarch. He spoke about family, about legacy, about what my late husband had built and what the building of it had meant, and what protecting it required. He spoke with genuine feeling. He had loved his brother, and the love was real, and the love was producing his certainty that he was right about this, which was how love sometimes worked. He said the word appropriate 7 times. I counted. Chisholm spoke about what people were saying, about the social dimension, about the specific professional cost of a public association that was being interpreted in a particular way by the particular people whose interpretation mattered in the particular circles that my professional life required. She was not wrong about what was being said. She was wrong about what the saying meant. Aunt Ngozi said less than either of them, but what she said was more precise. That a man 15 years younger who had far less than I had could not be in this relationship without an agenda, because that was the nature of significant disparities in resources, and pretending otherwise was a form of the very loneliness they were concerned about. I listened to all of it. I did not interrupt. I did not respond to individual points as they were made. I waited until they were finished. When the room had said what it had come to say, I looked at each person in it, and then I stood up and I walked to the sideboard where I had placed the folder before the meeting began. I picked up the folder. I came back to my seat. I opened the folder. I placed the first document on the coffee table. "This," I said, "is a prenuptial agreement, prepared by Barrister Aminu Garba, who most of you know as one of the most reputable family law practitioners in Abuja. It was drafted 3 weeks ago, reviewed and revised through 4 iterations, and signed by Tobechukwu last Tuesday." I paused. Without a lawyer present. Not because we didn't offer one. We did, twice. But because he said, and I'm quoting, "I don't need a lawyer to tell me what I'm agreeing to give up. I'm agreeing to give up something I never asked for. That's a simple document." The room was very quiet. I placed the second document on the table. "This is a letter, also signed by Tobechukwu, voluntarily waiving any claim to assets, company interest, or property accumulated before the date of any formal union. It is notarized and filed with my legal firm." I paused. He was told it was not legally necessary given the prenuptial agreement. He said he wanted it on record separately, because clarity mattered to him more than the absence of the document. I looked at Chisholm. I looked at Emeka. I looked at Aunt Ngozi. The room had the specific charged quality of a space where something expected has not arrived, and something unexpected has arrived in its place, and the people in the room are processing the substitution. "I want to address something directly," I said. "The concern in this room is that Tobechukwu is interested in what I have. I understand that concern. It comes from a real place, from love, from experience with how the world works, from the specific knowledge that powerful women are targets for exactly the kind of attention this concern is describing." I looked at each of them. But that concern was never about Tobechukwu specifically. It was about a category that he was placed in before anyone in this room had spent 20 minutes with him. A silence. "I have spent 7 months with him," I said. "I have watched how he works, how he speaks to his employees, how he handles problems, how he is with his son." I paused. "I have watched him in rooms that made him uncomfortable, and watched him stay exactly himself. I have watched him hear things said about him that would have made most people defensive, and watched him receive those things with a patience that I am still learning from." Another pause. "And I have watched him sign a document that removed any financial interest he might have had in this relationship. Not because I asked him to, but because he understood that my peace of mind was worth more to him than what he was giving up." I looked at the folder on the table. "A gold digger," I said quietly, "does not sign that document." The room was completely still. Chuka was looking at his hands. Adaeze was looking at me with an expression I had not seen from her before. The expression of someone who has been holding a position and has just received information that makes the position untenable and is adjusting in real time. Emeka looked at the documents on the table. He was 60 years old, and he had been the patriarch of this family for 25 years, and the specific quality of a man who has been certain for a long time, encountering something that his certainty had not accounted for, was written clearly in his face. He picked up the prenuptial agreement. He read it slowly. He set it down. He looked at me. "When does he want to meet the family?" he said. Not the answer I had expected. The right one. I looked at my late husband's brother, at the man who had loved his brother, and was trying, in the way of people who love imperfectly and sincerely, to love what his brother had left. "He's been waiting for you to ask," I said. Emeka nodded. Once. The nod of someone who has arrived at something and is acknowledging the arrival. "Bring him next weekend," he said. The room exhaled. And in the exhale was the specific particular quality of something that had been held at tension for a long time and had finally been released. Not resolved, not finished, but released, which was the beginning of the possibility of what came next. I looked at Adaeze. She was still looking at me. "I'd like to meet him before next weekend," she said. "Tomorrow," I said. She nodded. And that was the beginning of the part that mattered most. Adèle came to the workshop the following morning. Not with me. Alone. She had asked to go alone, which told me something about what she was actually looking for. When people want to assess someone, they go without the person whose judgment they are assessing, because the presence of that person changes what they see. Adèle was smart enough to know this, and honest enough to act on it. She came back 2 hours later. She sat across from me at the kitchen table with the expression of someone who has gone to confirm a suspicion and has found, instead of confirmation, something that required a different kind of thinking. "He showed me the workshop," she said. "He does that," I said. "He didn't perform it," she said. "He just showed it, the way you show someone your house when you're comfortable in it." She paused. "He introduced me to his employees by name, each one, with something specific, not just their name, but something about them, like he knew them." "He does know them," I said. She was quiet. "Ikene was there," she said. "On Sunday mornings, he usually is," I said. "He's 11, she said. "Yes. He showed me something he was reading," she said. "A book about electrical systems. He'd annotated it." She paused. "In the margins, with his own questions." She looked at me. "He's 11, and he's annotating technical books." "He takes after his father," I said. Adèle was quiet for a long moment. "I asked Tobechukwu something," she said. "What?" I said. "I asked him what he was afraid of," she said. "In this situation." I looked at her. "What did he say?" I said. She met my eyes. "He said he was afraid of the day you would stop being able to tell the difference between the people who were protecting you and the people who were protecting their idea of you." She paused. "He said those were different things, and that the difference was important, and that he hoped you could always see it." The kitchen was quiet. I thought about that. I thought about a family meeting and a prenuptial agreement and the specific, expensive certainty of people who love someone and confuse that love with the right to define what the love should include. "He's not what they said," Adèle said. "No," I said. She stopped. She was choosing, carefully, between what was easy to say and what was true. I was ready to find something wrong with him. I went there ready. "I know," I said. "I didn't find it," she said. "I know that too," I said. She looked at her hands. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not asking before I had an opinion." "You're asking now," I said. "That's not the same as asking before," she said. "No," I said. "But it's the right sequence for you. You form the opinion, and then you test it. That's how you work. I know how you work." She looked at me. "You're not angry," she said. "No," I said. "I expected it. I planned for it." I paused. "What I didn't plan for was what you just said. That you went ready to find something wrong and didn't find it. That was faster than I expected." She almost smiled. "He's very straightforward," she said. "It's disarming." "Yes," I said. "It is." She looked at the table. "Can I come with you next weekend?" she said. "To Emeka's?" "Yes," I said. She nodded. And we sat in the kitchen with the Abuja morning pressing through the windows, and the coffee between us, and the specific warmth of a moment that had been difficult to reach, and was worth the difficulty. Tobechukwu met Emeka the following Saturday, not at Emeka's house, at a restaurant in Maitama that was neutral ground in the specific sense that it belonged to neither the family's territory nor Tobechukwu's, which was the right environment for an introduction that needed to happen on its own terms rather than anyone else's. I had told Tobechukwu the broad shape of what had happened at the family meeting. Not every detail. Some details belonged to the family and would stay there, but enough that he understood what he was walking into and what the people across the table had been thinking. He had listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "The prenuptial agreement surprised them." "Yes," I said. "Good," he said. I looked at him. "Good?" I said. "Surprise is better than confirmation," he said. If the agreement had confirmed what they already believed, it would have produced more of the same belief. Surprise opens something. It makes space for a different thought. He paused. "That's the space I need." I thought about that. "You're more strategic than you appear," I said. "I'm patient," he said. "People confuse the two." At the restaurant, Emeka arrived first, with Aunt Ngozi and his youngest son, Namdi, who was 32, and who worked in the family's trading business, and who had the specific quality of someone who had come to observe rather than participate. Chuka was there, having driven from Port Harcourt again, because he said he wanted to be present for this, which told me he had taken a position about it that I had not yet been explicitly told. Adaeze was there. Tobechukwu came with Ekene. He had not told me he was bringing a keen. When I saw the boy at the restaurant entrance, walking beside his father with the quiet self-possession of a child who has been raised in the company of adults and has calibrated himself accordingly, I understood. He had brought Ekene because Ekene was the whole of what he had built that was not professional. The workshop was his work. Ekene was his life. And introducing both simultaneously was a kind of honesty that could not be manufactured. It was simply the full version of who he was, offered without reservation. Emeka saw Ekene first. Something shifted in the older man's face. A small, involuntary shift. The shift of someone whose expectations have been adjusted by a detail they did not anticipate. Emeka shook Tobechukwu's hand. Then he looked at Ekene. "This is your son," he said. "Yes," Tobechukwu said. "His name is Ekene." Emeka looked at the boy with the expression of someone who has been a father himself, and who is applying that experience to what he is seeing. "What do you like to study?" he said. Ekene looked at him with the direct assessment he brought to everything. "Electrical systems," he said. "And mathematics. I'm reading about circuit theory currently." Emeka blinked. "How old are you?" he said. 11, Ekene said. A silence. Then Emeka looked at Tobechukwu with an expression that had something in it that was different from the expression he had worn at the family meeting. Not approval. Something before approval. The specific look of someone who has received a data point that doesn't fit the existing model and is quietly revising the model. We sat. The lunch was what lunches are when they are significant, and everyone knows it. Careful on the surface, with the real substance moving just beneath, emerging in the specific moments when someone said something that was more honest than the moment's surface required. Emeka asked Tobechukwu about the business. Tobechukwu described it with the same specificity he brought to everything, how it had started, how it had grown, what the growth had required, and what it had cost, where he intended to take it. Emeka asked about the growth plan. Tobechukwu explained it without inflation, the specific realistic targets he had set, and the methodology behind them, and the risks he was managing. Namdi, who had been quiet for the first 40 minutes, said, "You're talking about expanding into industrial electrical systems. That's a different risk profile from residential and commercial." "Yes," Tobechukwu said. "The risk is higher. So is the margin, and so is the barrier to competition. Once you're established in that space, the relationship depth makes it difficult for others to replace you." Namdi looked at him with the expression of someone who has asked a test question and received an answer that passed. "Who are your current industrial clients?" he said. 3 manufacturing facilities in Abuja," Tobechukwu said. 1 in Kaduna. We've been their primary electrical contractor for between 2 and 5 years each. The retention rate is 100%. Namdi nodded slowly. Emeka looked at his son, then at Tobechukwu, then at me. The look contained many things. I received it without comment. Chuka, who had been sitting beside Ekene and had spent most of the lunch in the specific quiet of someone who was paying attention to something other than the main conversation, said, "Ekene, you said you're reading about circuit theory. What's the most interesting thing you've learned so far?" Ekene looked at him with the focused consideration of someone taking a question seriously. "That the path of least resistance isn't always the shortest path," he said. "It's the path where the conditions are most favorable for current to flow. The shortest path and the most favorable path are different things." Chuka looked at the boy, then at Tobechukwu. Then he looked at me with the expression he had when something had landed exactly right. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Adiez was looking at Ekene with the expression of someone who has just heard something from an 11-year-old that she is going to think about for longer than 11-year-olds usually require. The lunch ended 2 hours after it started. At the door of the restaurant, Emeka shook Tobechukwu's hand a second time. The grip was different from the first. "Come to the house for Christmas," Emeka said. "Both of you." Tobechukwu looked at him. "Thank you," he said. Simply, without inflation. Emeka nodded. He was 60 years old, and he had been certain of something for several weeks, and he was standing in the specific, quiet dignity of someone who has revised a certainty and has decided to wear the revision without commentary. I respected him for it, more than I had expected to. Chisholm did not come to the restaurant lunch. She had been invited. She had declined, with the specific excuse of a prior commitment that was probably real, and was definitely also a choice. She called me the following Monday. Her voice had the careful quality of someone who has been processing something and has arrived at a position they are going to defend. "The documents," she said. "The prenuptial agreement." "Yes," I said. "I want to understand something," she said. "Did you ask him to sign it? Did you—" "I presented it as an option," I said. "I explained why it existed and what it covered. I told him he should have his own lawyer review it. He said he didn't need a lawyer. He said the document was fair and he was signing it." A silence. "You presented it as an option," she said, "but you had it prepared." "Yes," I said. "Which means you had doubts," she said. I sat with that. "It means I'm a thorough person," I said. "It means I protect what I've built with the same care I used to build it. That's not doubt. That's discipline." "Kioma," she said. My middle name, the way Tobechukwu used it, but in her mouth it had a different quality. The quality of someone reaching for intimacy as a tool. "He's 36. He has a small business. You are one of the most significant women in this city." She paused. "The math does not favor you." "The math," I said. "The math," she said. "The practical math of a relationship between two people with that much disparity." I looked at my desk, at the folder that was still there, slightly thinner now, with the copies of the signed documents inside. "Chisholm," I said, "I want to ask you something directly." "Ask it," she said. "When Kelechi married you," I said, "Kelechi was her husband, 20 years her senior, significantly wealthier than her family at the time of the marriage. What did the practical math say?" A long silence. "That's different," she said. "How?" I said. The silence was longer. "It was a different time," she said finally. "The math doesn't change with time," I said. "Only who it's applied to." She did not respond. "I'm not asking you to celebrate this," I said. "I'm asking you to be honest about what your concern actually is, and whether the concern applies equally to situations that look the same from the outside but have a different person at the center." Another silence. "I'll think about it," she said. She hung up. I sat at my desk. It was not the conversation I had wanted to have with her, but it was the honest one. And sometimes, The honest conversation and the one you want to have are sufficiently different that choosing between them is itself a kind of test. I had chosen honesty. I had to trust it would arrive somewhere worth arriving. The event that changed the shape of everything happened 6 weeks after the restaurant lunch on a Wednesday afternoon that had given no indication, in its morning, of being the kind of afternoon it became. Tobechukwu called me at 2:15. His voice was the same voice it always was, unhurried, specific. But underneath it was something I had only heard once before, in a story he had told me about the morning his wife died, when he had described the quality of a phone call that had changed everything in the space of 6 words. That quality was underneath his voice now. "I need you to come to the hospital," he said. My stomach tightened. "Ekene?" I said. "Yes," he said. "He collapsed at school. They think it's his heart." I was already standing. "Which hospital?" I said. He told me. I was there in 22 minutes. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and the specific anxiety of a place where things could go either way, and the difference between the two ways was currently unknown. Tobechukwu was in the waiting area outside the cardiac unit. He was sitting with the posture of someone who is holding everything he has at a specific tension. Not collapsing, because collapsing was not available to him, but not maintaining either. Simply present in the way of someone for whom the present moment is the only thing that exists. I sat beside him. I took his hand. He held it with the grip of someone who has been alone in a waiting room for 40 minutes and has been needing something to hold and had not admitted it until the thing arrived. We sat. The hospital moved around us with its particular, indifferent efficiency. People in uniforms, equipment being moved, voices at the careful volume of places where urgency and calm are required simultaneously. "What do they know?" I said. "An arrhythmia," he said. "They're stabilizing him. The cardiologist is with him." He paused. "They said the arrhythmia may have been present since birth, undetected." "Since birth," I said. "Yes." His voice was steady. It cost him something to keep it steady, and he was paying the cost without complaint, the way he paid every cost. "They said it can be managed, with medication and monitoring and possibly a minor procedure." He paused. "They said he's going to be all right." "Tobechukwu," I said. "They said he's going to be all right," he said again. Not for me. For himself. Saying it out loud the way you say things you need to be true in the specific hope that the saying helps. I tightened my hand around his. We sat in the hospital for 4 hours. The cardiologist came out at hour 2 and confirmed what Tobechukwu had said. The arrhythmia was manageable. The immediate crisis had been stabilized. Ekene was conscious and asking about his circuit theory book, which the doctor relayed with the small, genuine smile of someone who found this detail as remarkable as it was. At hour 3, Adeze arrived. I had not called her. She had called me. She had tried to reach me during the first hour, and I had not answered. And she had, with the specific instinct of her father's face and my discipline, driven to the hospital. She came into the waiting area and saw us. She sat on the other side of Tobechukwu. She said nothing for a long time. Then she said quietly, "How is he?" "Stable," Tobechukwu said. "Conscious, asking about a book." Adeze looked at the floor. "He's asking about a book," she said. "Yes," Tobechukwu said. She shook her head slowly. Then she looked at Tobechukwu with an expression that had nothing managed in it. No calculation, no assessment, no positioning. Just a 27-year-old woman in a hospital waiting area, looking at a man whose son was in a cardiac unit and choosing, in that moment, to be simply present to what that was. "Can I get you anything?" she said. "Coffee, food, anything." Tobechukwu looked at her. "Coffee," he said. "Thank you." She stood. She went. Tobechukwu watched her go. He looked at me. She came, he said. Yes, I said. She didn't have to, he said. No, I said. She didn't. He was quiet. She's like you, he said. She decides things, and then she does them. She decides things faster than I do, I said. And then reconsiders. And then decides again, he said. Yes, I said. Usually the same decision. He almost smiled. The first time his face had moved toward a smile in 4 hours. Adiz came back with 3 coffees, carried with the specific focused care of someone who has given themselves a task and is completing it properly. She sat. We drank coffee in the hospital waiting area, the 3 of us, with the antiseptic smell and the fluorescent light and the particular quality of a place where time moves differently than it does outside, where an hour can contain everything and nothing simultaneously. At hour 4, a nurse came to tell Tobechukwu he could see his son. He stood. He looked at me. Then at Adaizi. Come, he said. To both of us. Ekene was in a bed that was too large for him in the way hospital beds are always too large for children, as if the bed is making a point about vulnerability that the child hasn't agreed to make. He was attached to a monitor that tracked his heart rhythm in the specific, continuous language of peaks and valleys on a screen. He was reading his circuit theory book. He looked up when we came in. He looked at his father with the expression of an 11-year-old who has been through something frightening and has decided, in the way of children who are trying to protect the adults who love them, to present the experience as less frightening than it was. The doctor said the arrhythmia is like a circuit fault, he said, a timing issue in the electrical system. Tobechukwu sat beside the bed. I know, he said. He said medication is like a stabilizer, Ikeni said. It regulates the timing. Yes, Tobechukwu said. That makes sense, Ikeni said, with the satisfaction of someone who has organized difficult information into a framework that accommodates it. Tobechukwu looked at his son. He put his hand over the boy's hand. He said nothing. Ikeni looked at him. Then he looked at me. Then at Adaizi. You both came, he said. Yes, I said. He processed this. Okay, he said. The tone of someone filing information correctly. Adiz pulled up a chair on the other side of the bed. She looked at the circuit theory book. Tell me about the timing issue, she said. What does the stabilizer actually do? Ikeni looked at her with the expression he reserved for people who asked questions he considered worth answering. And he told her. He talked for 20 minutes about electrical systems and timing and the specific mechanics of what had happened to his heart in the language of the thing he loved most. And Adaizi listened with the focused attention of someone who was not listening to the content but to the person, tracking the intelligence and the resilience and the specific, remarkable quality of an 11-year-old who had frightened everyone today and was now explaining cardiac arrhythmia in the framework of electrical engineering. When he finished, she said, You're going to be fine. I know, he said. How do you know? She said. He looked at her. Because my father fixes things, he said. And so do I. He paused. The doctors just need to understand the system well enough. Adaiz looked at him, then she looked at me. And in her face, in the specific, unguarded quality of it in that moment, was the expression I had been waiting for without knowing I was waiting for it. The expression of someone who has arrived somewhere they did not plan to arrive, and finds in the arrival something they needed, not approval, something larger than approval. Recognition. The recognition of someone who has looked at another person, a small person in a hospital bed, with a circuit theory book, and a heart that had misfired, and a certainty that the people who loved him could fix things, and has seen in that person something true about the world, something worth being part of. Ikene came home 4 days later. The cardiologist had prescribed a medication protocol and a monitoring schedule and a return appointment in 6 weeks, and had said, with the specific warmth of a doctor who has good news and is delivering it genuinely rather than procedurally, that with proper management, Akin's life would be full and unrestricted, and that the arrhythmia, caught now, was a condition he would live with rather than a condition that would live without him. Tobechukwu received this information with the specific quality of someone who has been holding a breath for 4 days and has finally been given permission to release it. He released it quietly. In the car, on the way home from the hospital, with Akeni in the back seat reading, he had moved on to a different book, something about circuit design, which the hospital librarian had procured for him and which he had made significant progress in during 4 days of monitored bed rest. Tobechukwu said almost nothing. He drove. He looked at the road. At one point, he put his hand briefly on the back of Akin's seat, not touching the boy, just touching the proximity of him, and then returned it to the wheel. I was in the passenger seat. I said nothing either. We had learned over 8 months the specific language of being present without requiring the presence to be narrated. The phone call from Chisholm came the week after Akeni came home. Her voice was different from the previous calls. The carefulness was still there, but what was underneath it had changed. There was something in it that I recognized from the hospital waiting room, from Adaizi arriving without being called, from Amika's revised handshake at the restaurant door. The something was a person who has been watching and has seen something they did not plan to see. I heard about the boy, she said. He's home, I said. He's well. I heard that too, she said. A pause. I heard Adaiz was at the hospital. Yes, I said. And that she stayed, Chisholm said. 4 hours, I said. A long silence. Kioma, she said. Yes, I said. I want to meet him, she said. Properly. Not a family event. Just, I want to sit across from him and have a conversation. I held the phone. This was not what I had expected. But it was the right request, the right sequence, the specific, honest request of someone who has been holding a position and has decided the position requires testing before it can be maintained. I'll arrange it, I said. Thank you, she said. She paused. The thing I said about the math, she said. Yes, I said. I was wrong, she said. Not about the math, about applying it to a person before meeting the person. She paused. The math is a useful tool. It becomes a bad tool when you use it to avoid looking at something directly. I sat with that. Kelechi said the same thing to me, she said quietly, when I told him what I'd been saying. He said I was doing what was done to us, to someone else, and that I should be embarrassed. A pause. He was right. He sounds like a good man, I said. He is, she said. 30 years and I still learn things from him. Another pause. I hope you have that. I thought about Tobechukwu, about circuit theory and timing and the path of least resistance not being the same as the shortest path. I think I do, I said. The formal announcement, which was not a press release and was not a ceremony, but was the specific, inevitable moment when a private decision becomes public fact, happened at the Abuja Business Council annual dinner in March. I attended with Tobechukwu, not as a statement, not as a declaration, as two people who had attended the same event together because they were together, which was simply true and did not require framing beyond the truth. Chibuike Emenike Okafor was there. He saw us across the room, and his face did the calculation that faces do when a prediction has failed to manifest, and the failure requires adjustment. He crossed the room at some point during the cocktail hour. He extended his hand to me. I shook it. He looked at Tobechukwu. Chibuike Emenike Okafor, he said, introducing himself with the specific, managed quality of someone who is performing a revision they have not yet completed internally. Tobechukwu Duru, Tobechukwu said. He shook the hand. The grip was what it always was, Direct, specific. No message except the handshake itself. Chibuike looked at him with the expression of someone who has said something in a room 3 months ago and is now standing in front of the subject of the statement and is discovering that the subject is a person. "I understand you're in electrical contracting," Chibuike said. "Industrial and commercial, primarily," Tobechukwu said. "We're in expansion." "Into what sector?" Chibuike said. The question of a man who defaults to business conversation because business conversation has clear rules. "Manufacturing facilities," Tobechukwu said. "We have several anchor clients. We're building the technical depth to become the primary electrical infrastructure partner for mid-scale manufacturers across the north." Chibuike looked at him. The assessment was visible, not hostile, not warm, but the genuine reassessment of someone whose model of a person is being rewritten by direct contact with the person. "That's a specific strategy," he said. "It's the right strategy for where the market is," Tobechukwu said. "Generalist contractors get replaced. Specialists with deep relationships don't." Chibuike was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Send me your company profile. I have a manufacturing facility in Kaduna that's been underserved by its current contractor." Tobechukwu looked at him directly. "I'll send it Monday," he said. Chibuike nodded. He looked at me briefly, a look that contained in its brevity more than it was designed to show. Then he moved on. I looked at Tobechukwu. He was looking at the room with the same expression he always brought to rooms. Present, unhurried, not performing anything. "He was the one at the charity dinner," I said, quietly. "I know," he said. "He just gave you a business lead," I said. "I know that too," he said. "Does it bother you?" I said. "The sequence." He thought about it honestly. "No," he said. "The truth arrives eventually." I said that. He paused. "This is the truth arriving. The form it takes is less important than the arrival." I looked at him. "You are the most patient man I have ever met," I said. "I learned it from the circuits," he said. "Current finds its path. You don't force it. You create the right conditions and let it find where it goes." I almost smiled. "Ekene said something similar," I said, "about the path of least resistance." "He's smarter than me," Tobechukwu said. "He arrived at it faster." "He had a better teacher," I said. Tobechukwu looked at me, the expression he had when something landed exactly where it was aimed. We stood in the Abuja evening, in the specific warmth of a March night, when the harmattan has fully retreated and the air has recovered its full weight, with the city doing its enormous and indifferent thing all around us. And it was both ordinary and completely the opposite of ordinary. The way the real things always were. 2 years after the charity dinner and the 3 words. Duru Electrical Services had expanded into the industrial sector with the specific, methodical discipline of its founder. Not faster than the work could sustain, exactly as fast as the work required. 7 new contracts in 8 months. A second workshop in Kaduna, staffed by 8 of the 14 new employees hired in the expansion year. The Chibuike Emenike Okafor manufacturing facility in Kaduna, which had become one of the anchor industrial clients, served by a team that Tobechukwu had selected and trained personally. Chibuike had sent a referral. 2 of them. Tobechukwu had not mentioned this to me until I asked. "You didn't tell me," I said. "It was his business to give," he said, "and mine to earn. There wasn't much to say about it." I looked at him. "He said things about you," I said, publicly. "And then he revised them," Tobechukwu said. "The revision is what matters. The revision is the truth. The original statement was just the model before the truth arrived." I sat with that. "You don't carry it," I said. "Carrying it would slow me down," he said. "I have things to build." I thought about Amara's words 2 years ago. You're always strategic. That's different from careful. I thought about what careful looked like. It looked like this. It looked like a man who had been called a gold digger in a room full of people and had received the words with the patience of someone who understood that the words were not the truth, and that the truth, when it arrived, would do what it needed to do without requiring his assistance. It looked like not carrying it. It looked like building anyway. Adai's called me on a Tuesday evening from London. Her calls had changed over 2 years, longer now, less careful, with the specific quality of someone who has stopped managing the conversation and started simply having it. She said, "Ikene sent me a message." "What did he say?" I said. "He said he finished the circuit design book," she said. "He said he's moving on to power systems." A pause. "He said, and this is a direct quote, that he thinks I would find power systems interesting because the same principles that apply to electrical distribution apply to business distribution networks, and that the parallel might be useful for my work." I was quiet for a moment. "He's 13, I said. "I know," she said. "He sent you a reading recommendation," I said. "Based on an analysis of how I work," she said. "Yes." I laughed. The real laugh. The one that arrives without preparation. "He's," Adai started. "Like his father," I said. "Different from his father," she said. "His father is patient. Ikene is something else. He's patient and strategic, and they arrive at the same place, but through different paths." "The path of least resistance," I said. "Not always the shortest path," she said, and I understood from the way she said it that Ikene had told her the same thing he had told me in the hospital, and that it had stayed with her the way it had stayed with me. "Are you coming home for the holidays?" I said. "Yes," she said. "I want to—" She paused. "I want to see Ikene's workshop." I looked at the Abuja night through my window. "He has a workshop?" I said. "Tobechukwu set up a corner of the Kaduna workshop for him," she said. "He sent me a photograph. He's been building a small electrical system, something to do with automated lighting, I think." A pause. "He said he's going to show me when I visit." I sat with that. Ikene, 13 years old, with a corner of his father's workshop and a circuit design book, and a plan to show my daughter something he had built. I thought about a tool wall and a father's arrangement, about things built right the first time, about the rightness being the reason to leave them alone. "Come home," I said. "I'm coming," she said. Chuka got married the following April. His wife was a woman named Obi, 30 years old, from Owerri, who was a structural engineer, and who had met Chuka at a site visit for a project his company was involved in, and who had, in the specific way of right things, arrived in his life at exactly the moment when he was ready to receive her. The wedding was held in Abuja. Tobechukwu attended, not as a guest who had to be managed or explained or positioned, as someone who was simply there, in the family section, with the ease of someone who had been arriving in the same direction as the family for 2 years, and had, over those 2 years, become the kind of presence that a room makes space for without the space being designed. He sat beside Emeka during the ceremony. I watched them from the front row, the two of them, different generations and different lives and different paths to this Saturday, sitting beside each other with the specific, quiet ease of people who have arrived at mutual respect through the difficult route of genuine contact. At some point during the reception, I saw them speaking. Not the careful, managed speech of men who are performing a relationship. The easy speech of men who have been around each other enough to have developed the specific shorthand of people who are in each other's presence regularly. I did not hear what they said. I did not need to. The quality of the conversation was the information. Chisholm found me at the reception. She looked different from the version of herself she had been 2 years ago in the family meeting. Not physically, but in the specific quality of her presence, the way a person changes when they have been holding a position and have finally set it down. "He gave a toast," she said. "Yes," I said. Tobechukwu had given a short toast to Chuka and Obi, 3 sentences, specific, warm, about the specific quality of people who build things carefully, and about what careful building produced over time. 3 sentences that were complete in the way that 3 precise sentences are always more complete than 12 imprecise ones. "It was good," Chisholm said. "It was him," I said. She looked at me. "I owe you an apology," she said. "A real one. Not the one I gave you on the phone." "You gave me a real one on the phone," I said. "I gave you the version I could manage on the phone," she said. "This is the version I mean." She held my gaze. "I was wrong. About him, about the math, about what I was protecting and who I was protecting it from." She paused. "I was protecting an idea of your late husband from being replaced. And that was—" She stopped. "That was my grief. Not yours." I looked at her. I thought about my late husband, about the photograph on the desk, about the specific, irreplaceable quality of 20 years of marriage and the specific, complicated question of what came after. "He would have liked Tobechukwu," I said. Chisholm looked at me. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think he would have." A pause. "He would have liked that Tobechukwu doesn't try to replace him." "He doesn't," I said. "I know," she said. "I can see that now." She put her hand briefly on my arm. Then she went to find her husband. I stood at the edge of my son's wedding reception and looked at the room, at Chuka and Obi dancing with the absorbed, complete happiness of 2 people who have found the right person and know it, at a Daisy laughing at something with a group of people her age, at a Kene sitting with his circuit design notebook at a side table, annotating something in the margins, at Emeka and Tobechukwu still talking, at the Abuja evening pressing warmly through the tall windows of the reception hall. I thought about 3 words said across a room 8 months before this, about the specific, elegant contempt of people who reduce a person to a transaction, about what the transaction had turned out to be. Not a transaction. A man. A man with a workshop, and a son who annotated technical books, and a patience that had outlasted every assumption made about him, and a quality of presence that did not change based on who was watching. A man who had signed a document, removing every financial interest in the relationship because his peace of mind was worth more than what he was giving up. A man who had brought his son to a first meeting because his son was the full version of who he was, offered without reservation. A man who had sat in a hospital waiting room and held a hand, and then taken his son home and said nothing on the drive because nothing needed to be said. I looked across the room. He was looking at me. The expression he always had, present, complete, exactly itself. I held it. He held it back. And between us, in the specific warmth of my son's wedding reception, with the Lagos evening doing its warm and enormous thing outside, and the music playing and the family around us in its complicated, real, developing way, between us was simply what it was, what it had always been, what no one in a room would ever be able to reduce to 3 words. Because the truth, as he had said, arrives eventually, and it had arrived, and it was exactly as complete as patience makes the things it waits for. 3 years after the charity dinner, Tobechukwu Duru was 40 years old. Duru Electrical Services had 17 vans, 41 employees, and industrial contracts in 3 states. It had won a national award for technical excellence in infrastructure contracting. Not the kind of award that is given to companies because they are large, but the specific kind given to companies that have done work of consistent, documented quality over a sustained period. Tobechukwu had received the award at a ceremony in Lagos, and had said 4 sentences in his acceptance speech, all of them about his employees and none of them about himself. And then he had sat down, and the people in the room who understood what was extraordinary about that had known. Ekene was 14 years old. He had built an automated lighting system for the Kaduna workshop that adjusted the bay lighting based on the work being done in each bay, which the workshop manager said had reduced their electricity consumption by 17%. He had documented the system in a notebook that looked exactly like his father's, handwritten, organized, with specific annotations and revisions, and the quality of something built by someone who understood that the documentation was part of the work. When Adais visited for Christmas that year, she spent 3 hours in the Kaduna workshop with Ekene, asking questions about the lighting system that grew progressively more specific as she understood the system better, and Ekene answered every question with the patience of someone who has a great deal to say and is grateful for someone willing to receive it. She brought him a book on advanced circuit design when she flew back from London in January. She had ordered it specifically for him. He called her to say thank you. They spoke for 45 minutes. Tobechukwu told me about the call afterward. He called her before he called me, he said. Is that a problem? I said. He almost smiled. No, he said. It's appropriate. The book was from her. I looked at him. You're proud of him, I said. Every day, he said. Simply, without the performance that pride sometimes wears. I thought about 3 years ago, about 3 words and a room that had already decided, about a folder on a desk and a document signed without a lawyer, about a hospital waiting area and 4 hours and coffee carried with focused care, about patience, about the truth arriving eventually. I thought about my late husband and his photograph, and the question of what came after, and the answer that had arrived at my gate 14 months after I stopped looking for it. I thought about what careful looked like. It looked like this. It looked like 3 years of consistent, specific, honest presence. It looked like a man who had been called a gold digger and had not carried it because carrying it would slow him down and he had things to build. It looked like things built right, and the rightness being the reason to keep building. My name is Chioma Ezenwosu. I am 54 years old. I founded and lead one of the most significant infrastructure investment firms in northern Nigeria. I am the mother of a son who got married in April, and a daughter who sends technical books from London to a 14-year-old she met in a hospital room. I am the woman who chose the man they called a gold digger. And in 3 years, not one of the people who used that phrase has found a single piece of evidence to support it, because evidence follows truth. And the truth, patient and unhurried, had arrived exactly when it was supposed to, and it was worth every second of the waiting. If this story stayed with you, if you felt every moment of Tobechukwu's patience, Chioma's courage, and the long, honest road from a room that had already decided to a family that finally looked, then subscribe. Share this with someone who has ever been reduced to 3 words by a room that didn't take the time to look. Leave a comment telling us which moment changed something in you, because the next story is already waiting. And it begins, as always, with someone being underestimated for the very last time. Stay with us.